Tune in. Back to today, though. Now, we were talking earlier in the show about the flooding that's affected many parts of the United Kingdom, and it comes as we see more and more extreme weather. So, fittingly, we're joined now by the Green Party's co-leader, Sian. Thank you for being on the programme. Well, the Environment Secretary said that we need to get used to these extreme weather events. Is it going to become the norm?
It is going to become the new normal. Climate change isn't any longer approaching our door. It's come through the door. It's in our kitchens. It's in our living rooms. And we are going to see more and more flooding events like this if we don't act much more quickly to deal with the root causes of this, which are fossil fuels, carbon emissions. The failure to deal with climate change emissions throughout the years has led to this getting as bad as it is. If we're going to stop it becoming worse and worse and worse, we have to take absolutely drastic action and do the kinds of investments that we were talking about during the general election. In London at the moment, we've got the Mayor of London putting forward £50 million for a Green New Deal. Now, that's not very much. We're proposing tomorrow in the budget to triple that within London, and we can do that reasonably easily within the Mayor's current plans. But, I mean, I'm standing for Mayor. If I were Mayor, I'd be able to do an awful lot more. But the real power for this lies with the government. I mean, the government gets to realise the health benefits. The government, which is they're now putting into the flooding risk assessments, they're going to look at the health benefits. The government, if it acts, can help save those health benefits, realise them within the exchequer, and so put in a lot more money. If we don't see this enormous action, the Green New Deals, the investment in climate action that we're asking for, then we are going to see more and more floods, and that's just the start of a wider climate chaos.
I mean, it's a long-term strategy. It's not really going to give much comfort for those people who are seeing water.
No, and in the short term, we've seen flood defence funding cut below what was promised in 2015, and particularly not focused into the right areas, not looking at vulnerability, but looking at, like you were saying earlier, looking at the house prices as a big factor, which obviously leads to places not getting the flood defence money they deserve. And it's really nice to see the Environment Minister actually talking there about natural flood defences. This is something the Greens have been talking about for a long time. We always look to the bigger picture, and looking further upstream at more natural, less drastic, less expensive things you can do is the right way to start tackling this too.
You were talking there about the kind of regional disparity. Do you think if these floods were happening in London, the government would be doing more?
I think they would have convened Cobra. I think there would have been a bigger response. But yeah, like I say, the investment is not going into the areas where the most vulnerable people are. It is looking instead at potentially population concentrations, but also house prices, the value of property. In London, I mean, my colleague Caroline Russell on the London Assembly has been looking at the impacts on London, and when you do add up the economic impact, obviously it's terrifying for London. Most of our jobs in London lie in flood risk areas, so we have to act in London as well, and that's what I'm proposing to do as Mayor. I think you can sort of see that only the Greens are the ones you can trust.
You've definitely got
to properly deal with this and think. And we've been thinking about this for 30 years.
Okay. Now, the UK is hosting the big kind of UN climate change conference later on this year. Big deal, of course. Can have a look at what Boris Johnson has promised. The Prime Minister says that there will be colossal new investments in infrastructure and science, using our technological advantages to make this country the cleanest, greenest on earth. That's Boris Johnson in December. You must be delighted that this is a Prime Minister who is taking climate change so seriously.
I mean, he will say things like that periodically, but then he'll also go ahead and approve new airports and new motorways and new HS2, which is a very climate-damaging scheme, actually, and not take action on renewable energy.
Is that not a good thing for the environment?
It's actually, I mean, it's got a big carbon budget to build it, and the actual savings it makes to the kinds of journeys that aren't really going to transform our transport system in the way we'd like. So we would invest that money in railways, but differently. But yeah, Boris Johnson, he hasn't been putting the effort into the COP summit that's coming up. I think when you look at what France did in the run-up to the Paris climate agreements that took place there, they worked diplomatically with immense focus, immense resources for an entire year to bring people to the point at which they could make agreements at the summit. The work isn't done at the summit. You don't just book a room. You have to do all that work ahead of time. And you can see no sign of this from Boris Johnson. I mean, Claire O'Neill, who was sacked as the chair of the COP summit, she said that they're miles and miles away from being ready to do what's needed at Paris. And this is a huge worry. This is the place where we're supposed to be agreeing the actions that we take to achieve not going over 1.5 degrees of warming. Agreeing actions are actually harder than agreeing targets. This work needs to be done now. It needs to have been going on for months already.
The problem is, you polled less than 3% at the election. Boris Johnson's got an 80-seat majority. I mean, you're not really winning the argument here, are you?
I think we won the argument. The question about how we do in elections
like
is
the Labour
down with
Party,
voting systems.
just like Jeremy Corbyn, talking to each other, or
yeah, well, I mean, we're extremely popular as a party. A lot of people agree with what we are saying. So in London last time, where people have 2 votes, I was the candidate for mayor. I got the highest number of second preference votes of any candidate. Now we just need to flip that around. It's not that hard to see how we could get a Green Mayor of London that way. Fixing our voting system, I mean, we've seen today the House of Lords scandal that's going on with the amount of expenses that are being claimed there. We need to fix Parliament, fix the way the country as a whole is governed. But in London, we do have a fairer system, and we will see more Greens elected this year.
OK, you were running for London Mayor. Clean air is obviously a big concern for lots of people in London, but also in lots of other cities and towns across the UK as well. What's your plan to tackle it?
Well, today I've announced a very, very ambitious new target that the current mayor doesn't have, to cut our traffic levels, the amount of miles we drive, by 40% by 2026. That is the kind of very ambitious target that we need to be setting if we're going to transform our city.
How
and this isn't just about emissions. This is about air pollution and carbon, but it's also about the space in our city. The amount of space devoted to car travel, to people driving on the roads is quite a lot. And if we can get that traffic down, we'll be achieving an awful lot. Now, I don't know if you remember the Olympics. During the Olympics, we had, for months and months beforehand, a very big communications campaign that was saying to people, think about the journeys that you take. Are you taking 2 journeys, maybe to go swimming and then go to the shops? Could you combine them into one journey? Could you travel at different times? Could you travel to things that are nearer by? And if you think about it like that, my target, which sounds really ambitious at 40%, is actually saying to people, could you remove or reduce the length of 2 out of 5 of your journeys in 6 years' time? This is totally doable.
A bit more, though. Then ask people very nicely if they will cut their journeys.
Yes, absolutely.
Otherwise, they can't help but think that this is ignore you.
This is a very small part of my transport plan, but it's a target the mayor doesn't currently have. He asks people to shift their modes of transport, and he is investing some money in transport like walking and cycling and railways, but he is cutting investment in buses. So my plans would also invest massively in the alternatives so that people have other options. But this idea that you just create a big mission for London, you get everybody on board behind a target, the way we did in the Olympics, there's none of that happening in London at the moment. We see a lot of advertising from the mayor, but it's mainly advertising him. We need to see the advertising that we saw in run up to the games that says, think about how you travel. Let's get behind this target, because the benefits to all of us would be absolutely huge.
Just finally, while we've got you, there's a story going around about Caroline Lucas saying that she is being investigated for giving someone a tour of Parliament in return for a donation of £150. Now, she said that she doesn't believe she's done anything wrong. What's going on?
All I can say about that is Caroline absolutely is clear that she thinks she has done nothing wrong on this. As I understand it, all the complaints that go through Parliament like that are confidential and details can't be discussed. So that is absolutely all I can say. But I'm confident that if Caroline says she's done nothing wrong, then she has not.
OK, thank you very much for being on the programme today, Sian Berry.